Hi, I'm Anita. Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be making a pendant called the Blue Oasis Pendant. This particular design was actually done with the Sweet Citrus collection by Eureka Beads. She did a pendant called Sweet Citrus necklace that was done by Bronzepony. So that's her original design. I decided to do something a little more with ocean colors, a little bit of blues and iridescent blues. So that's what I'm going to be doing today. And the tutorial I'm doing today is just the pendant. We'll be putting it on a Rolo chain of about 20 inches. So what you're going to need today will be, for tools, 2 pairs of flat nose pliers, a pair of round nose pliers, a good hefty pair of wire cutters, a pair of scissors. I've got crystal 6-pound listed for the material. I'm actually going to be using the smoke fireline so that you can see a little bit easier. You're also going to need Rolo chain or whatever chain of your choice. I'm also going to use an extender chain, a wire guardian, a couple of 6mm O-rings, a 4mm O-ring, a lobster clasp, and a bail. So then I'll go over the materials now. For this project, the materials that you're going to need are some DropDuos beads, some 8/0 seed beads, 11/0 seed beads, SuperDuos in 2 different colors. You're going to need, I'm using cream color and blue iris for today. You'll need some 6mm pearls, and you'll need some 2x3 Rondelles. You'll also need either delicas or treasure beads, that's the cylinder beads, and an 8mm Chaton. So those are the materials you're going to be needing for today's project. So go ahead and gather your materials, thread your needle with about 4 feet of fireline, and let's get started. We're going to start by threading our needle with 4 feet of fireline. You're going to put on a stop bead, and I'm just using a little round bead here, and I'm leaving about 8 inches for the tail. We'll weave that in later. And you're going to pick up a SuperDuos and an 11/0 4 times, like this. So you've got SuperDuos, 11/0, SuperDuos, 11/0, SuperDuos, 11/0, SuperDuos, and 11/0. So bring that down to your stop bead. Then we're going to bring our needle back through the SuperDuos and the 11/0. Pull that together like that. And we're going to reinforce this by going back through all of the beads again till you pass where you started. So just keep going. Right now, this is where my tail thread is. I'm going to go past that into the next SuperDuos, 11/0, and SuperDuos. I'm going to go through the next 11/0 and SuperDuos. So with your thread coming out of the bottom hole of the SuperDuos, you're going to advance your needle to the top hole of that same SuperDuos. Like that. So that's what you should have. For our next step, we're going to be picking up our accent color SuperDuos. I'm using blue iris for these. So we're going to pick up a SuperDuos, an 11/0, and a SuperDuos. Exiting the top hole of this SuperDuos here, you're going to go into the empty hole of the next SuperDuos. Do that again. Pick up your SuperDuos and 11/0 and your SuperDuos. exiting this SuperDuo, going into the empty hole of the next SuperDuo. And you're going to repeat that 2 more times. I'll meet you back when we get to the last one. Okay, I'm coming down to my last one. I've got my SuperDuo 11-0 and SuperDuo, exiting this SuperDuo, going into the empty hole of that SuperDuo and the next SuperDuo, bottom hole. So that's what you should have so far. So what we're going to do at this point is we're going to reinforce this all the way around. So go ahead and go back through all of your beads, making sure you're going through where your thread path is currently going through the SuperDuo holes until you get to the other side, and I'll meet you back. Okay, I'm coming at the end of reinforcing. I'm going through this 11-0 SuperDuo, cream color SuperDuo, and this next SuperDuo, like that. So you want your thread to be coming out of the bottom hole of the SuperDuo accent bead right after a cream colored one. So from here I'm going to advance my needle through the empty hole of this SuperDuo right here, like that. So you want your thread coming out of where there's not an 11-0. So you've got SuperDuo, SuperDuo, SuperDuo. That's where you need your thread to come out of. Okay, from here, I'm going to pause for a moment, and I'm going to take my stop bead off the tail thread, and I'm going to weave this thread in. So we're going to thread your tail thread on another needle, and we're going to advance this thread and tie a couple of knots on this tail thread to get it out of the way. So right now it's coming out of this SuperDuo right here. I'm just going to advance through the next 11-0 SuperDuo. I'm going to tie a half hitch knot here, bring your needle under a thread bridge, and then bring your needle through that loop and pull. Now I'm going to advance my needle through the next 11-0 and SuperDuo, and I'm going to repeat that step. Go under a thread bridge, bring my needle through the loop, pull, and I'm just going to now advance my needle through the next 2 beads like that, and I'm going to cut my tail thread off. So now we can continue going on to the next step. So now that we have our tail thread out of the way, our thread is coming out of this SuperDuo here. We're going to pick up our 2x3 rondelle bead, exiting this SuperDuo, going in through the next empty hole SuperDuo. So now we're going to go back to our main color SuperDuo. We're going to pick up a SuperDuo in our main color, an 11-0, and another SuperDuo, like that. Exiting this SuperDuo, you're skipping the 11-0 and going in through the empty hole of the next SuperDuo. So the pattern is whenever you have 3 SuperDuos together like that, you're going to be putting the 2x3 rondelle here. When you have the SuperDuo with the 11-0 in between, you're going to be putting SuperDuo 11-0 SuperDuo in between these 2 SuperDuos. So I'm going to repeat that one more time. So here I'm going to put a rondelle, go through the next SuperDuo. Now I'm picking up SuperDuo in my cream color, 11-0, and SuperDuo, exiting this hole here, going in through the next empty hole. So do that 2 more times, and then I'll meet you for the next step. Okay, I'm coming down to the last segment here. I've got my SuperDuo 11-0 SuperDuo, exiting this SuperDuo here, going in through the next SuperDuo, and through the next rondelle, like that. Now I'm going to advance my needle from this rondelle over to this rondelle, just to reinforce this a little bit. So from this rondelle, you're going to go in through this top hole SuperDuo, bottom hole SuperDuo, like that. Go through the next 11-0, bottom hole SuperDuo, top hole SuperDuo, and rondelle right there. So that's where you should be so far, with your thread coming out of this rondelle. For our next step, we're coming out of this rondelle here. We're going to pick up an 11-0, an 8-0, and an 11-0, like this. Exiting this rondelle here, going into this next rondelle over here. You're going to pull that, and you're going to notice it's going to kind of gather a little bit. So we're going to repeat that step, picking up an 11-0, an 8-0, and 11-0, exiting here, going into this next rondelle. Let's make sure that comes in front. Pull that nice and snug. Do that again, picking up an 11-0, an 8-0, and an 11-0, because we're going to be putting our crystal in here after this next round. So from here, we're going into the next rondelle right here. Just make sure that thread comes in front, like that. Pull, nice and snug. So now we're going to take our 8mm Chaton. We're going to place that in here. Let's try to pop that in so it's underneath the beads. You may have to hold it with your thumb for a moment. So now we're going to pick up another 11-0, 8-0, 11-0, exiting this rondelle, going into this next rondelle here. Right there. Pull your thread. Bring that thread over the top. Pull nice and snug. Like that. So that's what you should have so far. If it's a little loose, don't worry. Our next round is going to be tightening that up. For our next step, we're going to advance our needle, exiting this rondelle. We're going to advance our needle through the next 11-0, 8-0, and 11-0. Right there. Now we're going to place our stone in, pull tight, and we're going to be adding a delica bead. So pick up one of your delicas, exiting this 11-0. You're going to skip the rondelle, go through the next 11-0, 8-0, and 11-0. Pull and you want that delica to sit in front of the rondelle, like that. Pick up another delica, exiting this 11-0, go through the next 11-0, 8-0, and 11-0. Pull that nice and tight. And do that 2 more times. Pull snug after each one. And this is the last delica, exiting this 11-0, going in through the 11-0, 8-0, and 11-0. So if you notice, it's a little more gathered, but we're going to reinforce that again. So from here, we're exiting this 11-0. We're going to reinforce this all the way around. Exiting this 11-0, I'm going to go through the delica, 11-0, 8-0, 11-0, delica, and so forth. So go ahead and go all the way around, and when you come out of this 11-0, we're going to go through this next rondelle down here at the bottom. So I'll meet you when we get to the end of reinforcing. Okay, I just finished reinforcing. I'm exiting this 11-0. We're going to go through the rondelle, the SuperDuos accent color, and the cream color SuperDuos. Just follow the thread path. Now we're going through the 11-0 and the bottom hole of that next SuperDuos. Now we're going to step up, bring our needle through the open hole of this same SuperDuos right here. So that's where you should be, right there. For our next step, we're going to pick up a DropDuos, and you're picking up from the point, the hole that is closer to the point, like that. Pick up an 11-0, pick up another DropDuos, like that, exiting this SuperDuos here, going into the empty hole of the next SuperDuos. So with our thread coming out of this SuperDuos, we're going to pick up a 6mm pearl, bring your needle through the next open hole SuperDuos. So we're going to now pick up our DropDuos, an 11-0, and our DropDuos like this. Exiting this SuperDuos, going in through the next open hole SuperDuos. Now pick up a 6mm pearl, go in through the next SuperDuos, and you're going to repeat that 2 more times. DropDuos, 11-0 DropDuos, goes here, pearl here, and so forth. So I'll meet you when we get to the end. Okay, I'm coming down to my last pearl, going in through this SuperDuos here, then I'm going to advance my needle through the drop bead, the 11-0, so follow your thread path. We're going to advance our thread, our needle through a few more beads. So from here, I want to travel to exit this other DropDuos on the other end. So just follow your thread path through the next drop bead, SuperDuos, and pearl. Now we're going through the SuperDuos, the drop bead, the 11-0, through the drop bead, that bottom hole. And now advance your needle through the top hole of the drop bead, like that. So that's where your thread should be coming out of, the DropDuos top hole, like that. For our next step, exiting the DropDuos bead top hole, you're going to pick up a rondelle, going through the next empty hole of the drop bead. So from here, you're exiting the drop bead, you're going to pick up an 8/0, and we're going to go in through the purl, pick up another 8/0, exiting the purl, go through the top hole of the drop bead. And that's just going to fill in some of those gaps. So we're going to repeat that step. Whenever you have DropDuos, you're going to put a rondelle, and in between the drop bead and purl, you're going to put an 8/0 on each side. So we'll do that again. Rondelle, going through the next drop bead, pick up an 8/0, go through the purl, pick up an 8/0, go through the drop bead. So repeat that 2 more times, and I'll meet you for the next step. Okay, I'm coming down to my last segment here, picking up an 8/0, going in through the purl, picking up my last 8/0, going through the DropDuos, and advance your needle through the rondelle, the next drop bead, and through the next 8/0, like that. So your thread should be coming out of this 8/0 right before the next purl. For our next step, exiting this 8/0, we're going to pick up 5 of our 11/0s, exiting this 8/0, go in through the next 8/0, and advance your needle through the 8/0, the drop bead, and the rondelle. So that's going to place those 11/0s around that purl. So advance your needle through the next drop bead and the 8/0. And we're going to repeat that step. Pick up 5 11/0s, exiting this 8/0, going through the next 8/0, drop bead and rondelle, advance through the next drop bead and 8/0, and repeat that step 2 more times. Okay, I'm coming down to the last purl. I've got my 5 11/0s, exiting this 8/0, going through the next 8/0, SuperDuos, and rondelle, like that. So now I'm going to advance my needle from this rondelle through the duo bead and the next 8/0. So your thread should be coming out of this 8/0 right there. For this next step, you're coming out of this 8/0. We're going to be flipping our work over. You want to kind of have that thread towards the rear of your work. And we're going to be working with some bugle beads. I think I might have failed to mention that at the beginning. I apologize, but I'll make sure that is in the materials list. So from here we're going to be picking up an 11/0, a bugle, and an 11/0. And these are like about a 3 millimeter size in length, very small bugle beads. So try to pick up the ones that aren't damaged, because sometimes they'll have a jagged edge, so you don't want to use one that is damaged. So with your 11-0, bugle, and 11-0, exiting this 8-0, we're going to bring our needle through the 11-0 that's in between those two SuperDuos at the bottom, like that. Pull your thread, and that's just going to anchor that a little better. So now you're going to pick up another 11-0, bugle, and 11-0, and bring your needle through that 8-0 like that. So that's what you should have. So from here, we're exiting the 8-0. We're going to advance our needle through these 5 11-0s and through the next 8-0. So we're going to repeat what we did here. Pick up an 11-0, a bugle, an 11-0, exiting the 8-0, going in through this 11-0 right here. That's going to curve the piece just a little bit. Pick up that 11-0, bugle, 11-0, coming out of this 11-0 between those SuperDuos. I'm going to bring my needle through the 8-0. So now I'm going to advance my needle through these 5 11-0s and the next 8-0. I'm going to repeat what I did here. So you're going to pick up an 11-0, bugle, 11-0, go through this 11-0 here. You're going to repeat that, 11-0, bugle, 11-0, and then you're going to go through the 8-0 bead. And repeat that till you get to the end, and I'll meet you when we get to that last step. Okay, so I'm coming to my last 11-0, bugle, 11-0, exiting this 11-0, going in through my 8-0. So I'm going to advance my needle through these next 5 11-0s and through the next 8-0, like that. So this is what you should have so far. So what we're going to do now is we're going to be putting on the wire guardian. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to advance my needle so that I'm coming out of this DropDuos bead here. So bring your work, I'm going to flip my work back over, going through this DropDuos bead here. And go ahead and advance through the rondelle as well. We're going to be putting the wire guardian above the 2x3 rondelle right here. So with your thread exiting the rondelle, we're going to pick up two 11-0s, our wire guardian, bring that down, now bring your needle back through the wire guardian, make sure that thread is in the channel. Pick up 2 more 11/0s, and we're going to go through the opposite side of the rondelle, like that. So we're going to reinforce that 2 more times. So bring your needle back up through the 2 11/0s, the wire guardian, back down the wire guardian through the 2 11/0s. Just make sure your thread falls in the channel. Go back through the rondelle. And reinforce that 1 more time. Come back down through all your beads, through the rondelle, and through the duo bead and the 8/0. So from here, we're just going to tie some half-hitch knots, weave our thread through under thread bridges. You can go through the front or the back, whichever your choice. So go ahead and weave your thread through a few beads, do some half-hitch knots, and then clip your thread, and I'll meet you for the final steps. Okay, we've got our pendant done, got our wire guardian on, and all of our threads have been woven in, tied off. Very beautiful piece. What I'm going to do now is add my bail. So I have a 6mm jump ring here. I'm going to be using 2 pairs of flat nose pliers. So take your jump ring, hold it with one flat nose, and grab your other one and open that towards you. And we're going to loop that on our wire guardian, then on the bail, and close that. So that adds our bail. And what we're going to do now is prepare our chain. So I'm using a Rolo chain, and I'm going to be cutting a length for this about 20 inches. So go ahead and grab your chain, and I'll meet you back for adding the clasp. Okay, for my chain, I used these very heavy cutters. You want to use something that's very hefty when you're cutting through this type of chain because it's really thick. You don't want to damage your other cutters if they're for more lightweight gauged type of wires. So just a recommendation for you. What I'm going to do is add my lobster clasps. So I'm going to take my 4mm jump ring, open that up just like we did our other one. Pop on my lobster clasp, my Rolo chain, close that up. So now I'm going to thread my chain through my pendant, like that. Now I'm going to put my O-ring on my other end. Put that on my chain. And I'm also going to add my extender chain. So I've got about a 2-inch extender chain. That's optional. If you don't want to do that, you don't have to. We're going to close that up. So for my last step, I'm going to add a little bead accent to the end of my extender chain. So I'm just using a 4mm bicone crystal and a head pin. This is about 1.5 inch head pin. So just pop your crystal on like that. Take a skinny pair of flat nose pliers. Bend that 90 degrees like that. Take your round nose pliers, about like that. Now take your flat nose and wrap your wire around the round nose towards you, then pull it down towards the table. Rotate your pliers towards the table. Now pull your wire towards the table like that. So that's what you should have for your loop. So we're going to slide this onto the end of our extender chain before we wrap the wire. So now taking a skinny pair of flat nose pliers, I'm going to hold this end like that and wrap the wire with my other pliers. And try to get around a couple of times if you can. It doesn't have to be perfect. And that's good enough. So from here I'm going to clip off that excessive wire with flush cutters. Now I'm going to take a pair of pliers to hold the end, and I want to squish that sharp edge down like that so it doesn't poke anything. So there you have it. Beautiful blue Oasis pendant. Very easy to make. Very beautiful and tranquil colors. So I hope you enjoyed watching this tutorial today. As I mentioned, this original design is by Bronzepony. She did this on her tutorial on her channel using the Eureka Beads collection titled Sweet Citrus Summer. I think it was Sweet Citrus was the collection. It was a lot of oranges, bright oranges, and crystals with peachy colors. Very pretty. I wanted to do something a little more toned down that reminded me of the ocean. So I hope that you, if you're curious to see her tutorial, I'll make sure to include her link in my description box. I'll also have a link to all the materials and measurements that you need for this tutorial. Also, I have my own website where I sell my own jewelry, and you'll see a couple of pieces that I've done using Bronzepony's design. So if you're interested in looking at those, I'm having a half-off sale, or I was having a half-off sale that ended in September, and I do run those a couple of times a year. So if you're curious, check it out. I'll also have a link to the suppliers that I use, and I hope that you subscribe to my channel. If you haven't subscribed yet, please hit that like button. It also helps my channel analytics. And again, I want to thank you for joining me today, and have a wonderful week, and happy beading.